In my first video, 6 Figures from a Handmade Product, I explained the key factors that helped me create a wildly successful product that made me over 6 figures in 1 year. But when I watched it back, I realized there was something that I didn't tell you, and there was a whole other element to it. The video made it sound like I was just very clever and knew exactly what to do and just followed through. But actually, what made it possible was the story that was playing out in the background. In this video, I'm going to explain to you what made it all possible. Because if you remember, I wasn't even trying to make 6 figures from a handmade product. So what was I really trying to do? Okay, so here's the synopsis. In 2017, we built a house. A nice house. Then the marriage ended. I wanted to stay in the house, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. I had been a stay-at-home mum for 7 years with just some side hustling to keep me busy. I negotiated 2 years to get into a financial position where I could buy the house. Then I hunted for and found a full-time job because banks like giving mortgages to people with full-time jobs. I did the math to see where I would be in 2 years and realized I was going to be $15,000 short of where I needed to be. So how was I going to make that money? In order to find the answer to this question, I went to mortgage brokers, financial planners, accountants, lawyers, and no one could see how I was going to afford the house. In fact, the first lawyer that I saw said to me, "Laura, you may as well just sell the house and forget about it. I see women like you all the time, and in the end, they're much happier if they just let it go and move on with their lives." And then she said, "Houses like yours are for doctors and lawyers." When that lawyer said what she said, I was really offended, and it jolted me to realize that everyone had made these assumptions about me based on what I looked like from the outside and the position I was in at the time. So at the time, I was broke, sad, tired, I didn't have a job, and a lot of people were also projecting how they would feel and what they would do if they were in a similar position, and a lot of people would have just given up. So I realized the problem wasn't really so much what everybody thought of me, but rather that it was wrong. And I had information about me that no one else had that made me think that maybe I could pull this off. I had a degree, I had work experience, I had previous success in my career, I was hardworking, I was creative, and I was a determined person. I knew I'd been through hard things before and I'd got through them. I realized that people were also projecting onto me their own fears and how they would feel if they were in that situation, which was that they would give up. But that's about them and not me. So all this pushed me very quickly into a mindset of, they don't know me, they don't know who I am, they don't know anything about me, they don't know how smart I am, I'm just as smart as anyone else. And my favorite mantra was that a dollar made by a lawyer or a doctor is worth just as much as a dollar made by anyone else. And so a huge desire was born in me to not necessarily prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. I had a fire in my belly. I became really determined. I kept telling everyone around me that failure was not an option, because for my children who had watched the house being built, I had told them that that was going to be their house and I was going to keep that promise to them. And aside from all the emotional stuff, it was a really great investment. It was a good house in a good location, and I would have been crazy not to try to buy it. And so, as can happen to people when they get in a position where they have a huge desire and a huge sense of self-belief, all the BS excuses that I would normally make to avoid having to do that, all the procrastination, all the self-doubt and the self-sabotage, there is no time for that anymore, and it all falls away. And I kind of became a super version of me. $15,000 in 1 year seemed very achievable to me if I broke it down into a weekly basis. So I looked around at what I could have to sell, because I had sold plenty of things online before, and I had made some ball cushions for the new house, and they looked really good. And the reason I'd made them was because I could not buy them easily. There were probably only about 4 people in the world that I could find who were making and selling them, and they were at least $500 each. So I knew this was an opportunity that I could take up to make them cheaper, but also to make them more available to people. If you check out my other video, 6 Figures from a Handmade Product Part 1, I talk you through all the reasons why those cushions were a really great product to sell at that time. So from that point on, it was just a matter of following through each day. It probably took me about 6 months to get everything up and running. So finding the right fabric, which I had to source from overseas, practicing how to make them in a way that made them really nice and round, and getting on Instagram and finding the right people to target and getting them into the right influencer accounts. That all took about 6 months to get the momentum until I started making some money. And meanwhile, I just had this deep sense of knowing for sure, without a doubt, that the cushions would take off and I would definitely make enough to buy the house. It was easy for me to regularly imagine myself as the proud owner of that house. I imagined myself going out celebrating, feeling really confident and independent, like a full-grown adult who owned a house and was very successful. I imagined how I would feel, I imagined how I would look, what I would wear, how I would carry myself, and I felt it as if it had happened. In hindsight, without really knowing, I was actually practicing a lot of the manifestation techniques that are being taught very widely. And these are all things taught by Neville Goddard, Abraham Hicks, and Bob Proctor, among others. I definitely still had moments of doubt and feeling afraid and not really knowing how everything was going to turn out. But once the cushions started selling, it actually got easier to believe and imagine that, and to know and to see it coming into fruition. It also got a bit harder because I was having to get up really early and stay up really late around my full-time job and looking after the kids to make them and ship them. But underlying all that was just this really great sense of achievement and happiness and knowing that this was going to work. I don't really know if I chose the product and then started believing in it, or I was already believing in the outcome and then I just knew to use that product. But I'm pretty sure having the feeling of it being real comes before any decisions or actions. So I think I was already in the right mindset and that made me choose that product. So I know I usually give you a list of things to do, but in this case, I'm just going to give you a really short list of things that you don't have to do anymore. Almost like a permission slip if you need one. So firstly, it's okay to not do things if you don't feel motivated to do them. It's okay to procrastinate and it's okay to do less stuff. It might not be the right time to do that thing. If you're stuck and you don't know what to do less, be still, get quiet and listen. And know that work that you do in a moment of clarity can be worth more than years of toil. Because what you're waiting for is that definite knowing, that definite desire. Because I know if it wasn't for that, I would never have achieved what I did under ordinary circumstances, despite the knowledge and experience that I had. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I'm also bringing out a newsletter soon, so you can click below, enter your email, and you'll instantly download a PDF of 7 essentials for wildly successful products.